Welcome to another Villa Gaia Sessions episode. It is Sunday afternoon here at Villa Gaia, and I asked our special guest, Alex Alegria, if he has some time to share more of his wisdom with us.
Thank you.
Alex, thank you for
Very
joining.
happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, really nice to have you here. We've been having already some really good conversations about systemic investing, impact, paradigm change in business, and all that's emerging in the world. So I thought let's take the opportunity and grab Alex into the podcast room to chat a bit more about it.
And also laugh a bit.
Yes, please. Yes, please. I have a whole bunch of questions ready here, but let's see how the conversation flows. Maybe to easily get into it, can you share a little bit about what is your bond with Villa Gaia? What has brought you to Villa Gaia?
Well, Villa Gaia. So this journey started 3 years ago with a young, handsome Italian called Jim Andrea. That he came to Dubai with other group members of the Fvtura team, and I remember we were sitting in the Capital Club, and I asked G, short for Jesus now. I said, "What is it that you really need?" And Fvtura back then was, had a different focus as a venture builder and in the impact space, and his answer was, "We need spaces." You remember that? So he said, "We need spaces." And I said, "That's unusual." And then he said, "And industry experts." So he didn't talk about money, which is the first thing I would actually hear from, anybody, especially if they are directing a conversation to an investor or what perceived as, as a potential investor. So I said, "All right, well, we're in May. Okay, so where is it that you guys hang and around?" And he said, "Grosseto." "Well, July I'll be in Italy." And that was the start of that journey back in almost 3 years ago. And it's a beautiful journey, a lot of turns, just like getting here from Rome, but with one destination. And that landed in Villa Gaia. And now I see beautiful souls that I haven't met before, that coming together as a real manifestation of what it means to work together for the greater good. Not so much about the intellectual ego or the reward, or even the ideology, but rather being united for a common purpose, to express this beautiful, unique talent in service of greater good, which I see here in Villa Gaia and I see here around me, and makes me very grateful and heart fulfilled.
Amazing. And vice versa. Having you here, the energy you bring, the possibilities you give to us and the team to be here and explore and ground this impact hub that's also for us very new and an adventure we're diving into. We've been having conversations here around the impact investment space and impact investment networks, systemic investing. And I sense that there's maybe a difference in vision that you carry for what we're moving towards and what is important to pay attention to with such investments compared to, let's say, the bigger portion of the space. And in my view, you're yeah, you're a leading edge thinker in this way. You're more innovatively forward thinking. Can you share a little bit more on your vision on systemic investing, and maybe what is something that most people, organizations in the space are overlooking?
Yeah. Um, it's a good question, and there's a big challenge in our life that we become so acquainted uh, with the linear thinking and Newtonian way of thinking um, since almost 400 years now. Um, Science is great and uh, has created a lot of prosperity for humanity and opened our minds. And at the same time, sometimes we um, we have become more we have become more, I would say, inclined to uh, to identify science with the left brain thinking, with the rationale, with the logic. That's the only science as if we appreciate. Um, Forgetting that we as a human, we're not just a left brain. We're not just um, about rationale and about logic. We also have a right brain, but also not only right brain, because some people are only spending their time in the right brain, uh, but rather a whole brain, a centered heart. That is not taught to us in formal education. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about centered heart leadership. Um, and what does that really mean? You know, um, I went to the business, best business schools and so on, um, and studying specifically leadership and leadership development. That's not something you would hear in a classroom in Harvard Business School. Um, so you have to go on your own journey um, to de-learn or unlearn and learn again. And I'm not here to say that what others are doing is bad or is wrong or whatever. I myself I'm going through that journey of learning, and every sinner has a future, and every saint has a past. So whatever that means, we are all on that journey, and we are all evolving. Maybe it's my time. Maybe somebody else, he still needs time, and that's okay. That's part of that compassion and love, and and feeling uh, that unity, that that personal transformation is fundamental for our collective transformation. And that cannot happen only from a conscious thinking, cannot happen just because I believe that we are living in a difficult moment in humanity or we facing climate. Then if the climate is resolved, there's no purpose for living anymore, and or if I'm doing this for my kid, well, if you don't have a kid, so what happened, then fuck, I mean, there's nothing more to live for now. So a lot of things that we are seeking outside of us is already existing within us. So that's basically my approach is very intuitive. I can put names. There's a lot of names out there. I tag on some of these names because that's what easier for communication. But I'm an intuitive, conscious leader who drives from that centered heart, and I have all the powers I need, just like everybody, whole and complete. It's only our human illusion that has put us in that place, thinking that we are lacking. that we need to seek more, that we need to validate who we are intellectually or in any other mean. And I see the results out of that. It's so beautiful. And it's beyond what I could make in very organized and linear way of thinking. So there's a linear goal setting and there's a quantum way. So, one you can explain and another one you have to feel and experience. So that's my approach. And that's why there's a lot of work, maybe you can address it from system change, but there's a lot of work that I focus on, which is that personal transformation, that consciousness evolution at a personal level, without any expectations of an outcome, just sharing that gift. And then the transformation happens and takes care of itself collectively. And that's the beauty about it. There's no force to exercise.
Just invitations.
Yes.
Yeah, you're here now at Villa Gaia with a team of organization that you invested in, bringing them here on a 5-day journey, also around consciousness exploration, self-reflection. So really beautiful to see how that's an invitation for them to participate and explore themselves without it being mandatory.
Yes.
I sense there's a personal story behind this too. I already heard a bit indirectly, like at the dinner tables, that there's a past and that your past is not necessarily how you are now. That there was a wake-up call or some evolution happening. Can you speak a bit more to that? What is that the case, and how did that emerge for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's back in 2002, when I was, at the beginning of my business in the metal recycling space. So I landed on this tender in Sudan to dismantle the railway road with a local partner, and I remember I went there so that we can load our vessels with all these scrap that was actually dismantled from the railway, ready to go to the thirsty and hungry Asian recyclers. And I see this guy that he was in the warehouse and loading that material on the truck, and he was shirtless, had a tiered jeans and a flip flop, and as I reflect on what he's doing, and loading, like, steel is heavy, is not something that you actually normally in other countries use machines. You don't use people. And I only can think of saying to myself, how can I live with this? But I turned a blind eye, as maybe some other people also do. And I went and I asked the guy, the supervisor, out of curiosity. I said, "How much you pay this guy?" And he said, $2 a day. So it was slavery in the making. But I continued profiting and doing business. So nothing has changed. So I know this also may sound like a story to a redemption story, or to recycle my own reputation. But Oscar Wilde said, every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. So you go through that. Everybody does. And you have a wake-up call. Although for me, there was no single, let's say, moment of that thing, which everybody think that there's only one single moment, but there were different ones. But certainly the very first wake-up moment for me was when I was in Bali 2011, and I was with a guy that he was doing some work on somatic therapy. I considered him a teacher, a mentor. His name is Janor, and later on he became CNN hero a few years ago. And I was having this conversation with him, and I said, Janor, I feel like in my life I'm swimming toward an island that represent the end of my life. But I don't know if I get there, there will be an island, or probably will be the wrong island, but will be too late for me to, do anything about it. And then he said, in Balinese philosophy, we have something called Maya. So I said, what is Maya? And he said, Maya is illusion. So we believe that we live in a world of illusion, and anything we believe in, it becomes true. If you believe there's an island, then that's your own truth. It is true for you. It doesn't matter really what's true and what's not. And that day was, the start of the change of my own perception, even being judgmental with the Balinese putting an offering, front of their shops, thinking superstitiously that they will actually gain clients, against all the linear thinking. I said, it might not be my truth, but it is true for them. And if it's true for them, then it is true, because everything is illusion. So that was a moment, and it took me to more of an exploration, I would say. And certainly that was a wake-up moment for me on a personal level. But on a business level, it was difficult because we were taught, I was taught, to live that separation. So I didn't know that there could be something different. And I remember back 2014 when I was in Harvard Business School, there was a professor called Robert Kaplan. He wrote a book which was part of the curriculum of the authentic leadership, and it's called What You Really Meant to Do. And also he talks about his story and so on. And I was at that time in a moment trying to figure out, what is that sweet spot between your purpose, passion, and your skills, and what you can add value to others. But it brought me more delightful confusion rather than a straight answer. So I continued on that journey. And 2019, I landed in Ecuador, and while I was living there, and I went and I spent some time with the Shuar tribe. And one day I was talking to one of their spiritual leader, his name Eduardo. And I asked Eduardo, I said, what is Earth for you and your people? And he said, Earth is a mother, is what nurtures us, gives us food and water and shelter. It's a spirit. And as I reflect on his words, though consciously I believed in oneness and interconnectedness, but I never heard it from, somebody in the middle of the jungle with that perception. And I said, if the civilized world, between bracket, believed in this, we wouldn't have any climate crisis or any of that. And such a powerful belief, if you are able to change that at a really deep conscious or subconscious level, because it's already changed on a conscious level, but at deep subconscious level, and feel that interconnectedness, you don't need to do anything. Things are already done. And maybe that was the aha moment, for me personally. And that put me on a continuous journey also of personal evolution, that brought me where I am today.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's been a gradual process,
Yeah.
a general curiosity and willingness to learn, I recognize, and all these pieces of wisdom handed along the road that land inside of you and step by step open you up more to like these higher truths and deeper understandings. Eventually shaping a whole different way to move through life and business now compared to 20 years ago.
I'm still looking for that magic pill, so I'm working on it. Hopefully that will get us somewhere.
We'll put it on the to-do list.
Maybe you guys can work on it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll let you know when that comes out. Uh, really interesting. I really love weaving this like more the business and investment side of things with the personal side of things. 'Cause I think that's one of these old world illusions that we can keep business and private separated and that we don't bring our personal stuff into the boardroom. But I've never understood it because when I have personal issues and I'm down and my mind is full with thoughts around it, and then I have a business meeting, it's good for the others to know about it because there's a different version of me showing up there than if it would all be rainbows and butterflies inside. So also in the bigger picture, I'm curious if we switch back from this personal space into the investment space, what all of this means for your investment decisions. How do you decide what organizations to invest in? And maybe you can name some examples of current investments and like why they are so important to you.
Yeah, sure. I like to, before that, make a comment on that duality that we live in. And I wrote this piece. In the market of life, where souls are sold and bought, we weave two fabrics, one for the show and one for the heart. Yet why this separation? Why this cruel artificial art? Why split the soul in halves as if joy and sorrow can be fought? The world has taught us to build walls, to box our radiant light, to dim our passion in the workplace, to hide our dreams at night. They say, stress is the norm. They say, stress is the norm, a badge of honor in the fight. Yet who thrives in this division? Who takes a flight? That's my piece. So going on the investment part, for me, I'm not really traditional investor per se. I never considered myself an investor. I mean, a part of trying to put kind of identities to that. I've been an entrepreneur, I exited companies, but making an investment decision just for the sake of multiplying wealth or financial wealth never made sense. And that's the reason why it was very hard for me to make investment decision. I was never convinced and of why would you invest in this or not. And always it took time. I'm part of an impact investors networks and communities and so on. So I see deals, I see a lot of funds. Nothing particularly attracted my attention per se. But then things start changing, and I start looking at an ecosystem approach. A lot of investors, even in the impact space, they are still chasing unicorns. I like to think of myself as an ecosystem investor who can um, invest in an ecosystem. Even the donkey can thrive, you know. Um, and and with that sense, there's some of these investment decisions that even though intuitively I'm making, I mean, of course, you look at the financials and so on, but intuitively in terms of how they could possibly come together. And not necessarily, I would say that I will have or I do have the absolute clarity about that in the moment. But I'm so comfortable with the uncertainty that um, I don't need, you know, the tools of this financial world that it gives me about the risk mitigation and all that, because I thrive on the uncertainty, you know. That what actually keeps me going. And not only I thrive, I see the magic unfolds in that uncertainty. And if you make decisions, not necessarily linear, but from the field, then you use your intuition. And when you use intuition, you say that, okay, well, this will serve. But how would it serve? Then, you know, the connection may come later. And it's okay. Don't have to worry. I don't have to calm the mind that, you know, got used to getting his kick from the roadmap clarity, you know, because I'm okay with this unclarity. I thrive in this unclarity, you know, which is it's and I understand that it's very difficult. And unless if you go through a real personal transformation, you wouldn't be able to do that. And it has nothing to do with the amount of wealth that you have, you know, at the end of the day, because there isn't any investment. There's always an investment bigger than you. There's always an investment can drag you down, you know. So the point is not about that. The point is um, being able to navigate consciously which investments to make, and then how do they play a role in the ecosystem itself. You know, how is it important in that ecosystem building? Um, you know, one of the recent investments I made in a venture builder, uh, because I understand that innovation is important to transform our economy from degenerative to regenerative. This is kind of investment that is necessary into the space to make that transition. Um, but the reality is that what I'm seeking is something beyond that, and not about an investment, but it's more about, you know, how possibly collectively uh, that we can do things together, rather than I come to your fund, you come to my fund, I come to your house, you come to my house, you know, that kind of thing, which is what is happening right now. But for that to happen, we need some level of that deeper connection and that person transformation that will make us, you know, cross that river to the other side, where we see that we are already on the other side together, even though that may not have happened um, physically, you know, but intuitively it did. So, you know, that's my thinking, and my you know, my current approach. There's a lot of also investments I think about from community resilience point of view, meaning that, you know, if you make such an investment, does it support future urban mining? Does it support community resilience, local manufacturing, things like that, which I find is important, going against the globalization and the global economy and all that. Anything that goes in the opposite direction, you know, up for it. And also sometimes, you know, there are some things I'm a very practical guy, so I look into the transition, like what are the things that we can do in transition for the next 5 years. Uh, Not necessarily that this means that this is a very strategic, but it means that it's important for now, and the success of that also feeds the entire eco system. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I look at. And maybe last, I know this is a very long answer to a question, but I may cover other questions that you may have. So I appreciate your patience.
I am all ears.
Yeah. Um, so one of the things that I think about is how a planetary company behave. And what I mean about a planetary company, I mean just a name. People talk about whatever purpose driven. I don't know what, everybody name something different. But what I mean about planetary company, a company that lives and breathes in interconnectedness with its environment, with its people, with the planet, and with everything. Um, that a company does not live in separation. A company understand that the journey to the whole is when business meet the soul, and not only understand consciously but live that as an experience. So so for me, I invest in reshaping this type of company, and if that can be created, and from whether um, the personal transformation that the people in that company go through, to how they make decisions, to how this ownership is taking place, to the processes, to the strategy, and everything, then you have an example of how does it mean that we live, that we have a company that is acting as nature, as it acts, from harmony and balance and resilience and, timing and cause and effect, all these principles of nature, but not blah, blah, good thought, but rather deep embodiment of these principles. So I focus a lot on that, and that's like my, call it passion, and that's what I like to see getting scaled in the ecosystem. It is the 5.0 culture transformation of existing businesses or future businesses. Another way, we never learned this in school. Nobody taught us that. Um, and not necessarily it's a linear manual, you know. You got to go through real work and real experience to be able, to do that transformation. But the power of that is huge. The power that collective can do is beyond anybody can imagine. And that's for sure.
So good. Oh, you indeed you did tick off multiple questions with that. Um, Almost feels out of place to speak now because the words you just shared they really deserve to land inside me, inside anyone listening here, because I feel you touch upon so much truth in a context of business and investing that usually it's about completely different things. You're speaking about full integration of how nature works, how the universe works into the way we operate, do business, come together, collaborate, and form symbiosis with our surroundings. The world needs a lot more of that. Um, yeah, One question that I would love to ask you is in relation to, let's say, the world of impact investing, systemic investing. You mentioned you're part of several networks and communities who are active in that space. I don't know all the people in there, but when I hear you speak, I hear a thought leader, a front runner, somebody who has explored more of consciousness integration, both on a personal level and an organizational level, and actually really doing it and living it beyond talking about it. And then when I think of such a network, I always see this this normal distribution, like the innovation curve, right? You have the pioneers up front, the early adopters, and then early majority, etc. So I imagine that within these networks there are at least a few dozen, maybe a few hundred people were pushing that edge and almost ready to really go into that next level. What is something you like to say to these people? Like they want to make an impact, they feel something has to change, and they've been trying for years, but something isn't fully working out yet, and they're looking for a solution. What might be the thing that they're overlooking, according to you and your experience?
I would say one word: one person at a time. We are conditioned a lot that uh, that we need these big goals, these big changes, so that we feel good about ourselves, that our life becomes or have more meaning, that we deserve to have this feeling of that is coming really from the outset about living a life with a purpose, as if this life doesn't have a purpose. So, and I see that a lot in the, not specifically in the impact community, actually in every community, but I'm saying that specifically in that community because if you are driven by the outcome that you want to see in the world, I'm going to say good luck. And not because I'm not optimistic. I think because human being, they are very myopic sometimes, looking at their 100 years of their life on earth as if it's the universal time, not knowing that is insignificant in that sense, and understanding this reality of that human experience that is imperfect by design, that it's not who we are. We are beyond that at a consciousness level. We are vast, and we have no beginning, no end in that consciousness. If you go back to the root, you will understand that that the only thing that you need to do, and that's what I do. I don't know about, this is not for me to speak about how things need to change or not. I need to make that change and I live that change. How does it, come out to the world? Everybody takes it in his or her own way. Aligning a clear intention with your best action and every single day, that's the only thing that you need to do. Nothing more, nothing less, and allowing things to emerge and to evolve on its own. I can't really, to be honest, say more about this because that's my own experience and that's what I'm doing. Maybe the only thing that I would probably add here, that intuitively I look at catalysts and I try to enable catalysts intentionally, that I know if I enable these catalysts, then they will enable a lot more. You can call this my theory of change if you want to put framework for, names and so on. But
yeah, the highest leverage points.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Oh, one part of me wants to ask you many more questions. Another part feels like we need to stop at the peak. Before we close off, I would like to give you the space if there's something more you like to share with the people watching this, both in the systemic impact space and also in the regenerative project space. With Gaianet, there's a network of hundreds of project leaders who are on the project side, trying to be catalysts, often looking for the resources to do the work and being driven by heart and purpose up to this point. I'm really curious if you have something to say to them, or if it comes down to the same thing.
I would say what Rumi has said once. I was clever. I wanted to change the world. I became wise and I changed myself.
And what you seek is seeking you.
Yeah. You are not seeking, you are not lost.
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for walking this path with courage, authenticity. Thank you for opening up doors for us here and being an enabler to the ecosystem.
My pleasure. Next time, let's make more jokes about that. I think it would be, kind of.
Really good. That's a deal.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Awesome. Thanks, Alex.